In this video, we'll show you the complete rundown of how to install a Platipus S6 Anchor with a 10mm threaded rod using a hydraulic hammer. Please note, this installation process is the same for the S8 Anchor with a 12mm threaded rod. Unpacking the gear, you find the S6 anchors, 3m lengths of 10mm threaded rod, load nuts, couplers if required, load plates, a hydraulic hammer, power pack, a hydraulic hose, a hex shank, drive rod sections, a drive end and if required a coupler, the rod remover pair, stressing jack, D-shackles and a rod remover clamp. The testing gear will consist of a test plate, a yellow square washer, test jack stand, 20-ton jack, hydraulic hose, 200 kN hydraulic pump, 200 kN hydraulic load gauge, and a test sheet for recording the loads achieved. You will also need the following customer supplied items. A power source for powering the 200 kN hydraulic pump. This is usually a small generator or a 3-pin plug nearby. A tape measure for recording the extension achieved. Note that extension refers to the distance the tendon extends out during the load locking phase. This will be covered off in more detail later in the video. Spray paint, adjustable spanners, ear protection, safety glasses and gloves, a petrol can, a clipboard and a pen, and a grease gun for lubricating the drive rod ends. Lastly, it is recommended to have a 2-person crew for the optimum productivity. Next, we'll explain the details of the power pack and hammer. The power pack uses 4-stroke petrol. Remember to always check the oil level. Firstly, make sure the hydraulic pump is turned off. Remove the end caps from the hose fitting. Connect the hose extensions to the power pack and connect them to the hammer's hose pipes. You should feel each connection click in place. Make sure the petrol switch and the choke are open. Switch the power pack on. Let the power pack run for 5 minutes before switching the hydraulic pump back on. Let's get started with the installation process. Firstly, let's assemble the anchors. Thread a locking nut approximately 100mm onto a length of 10mm threaded rod. Screw the end of the threaded rod into the iron clevis of the anchor head. Tighten the locking nut against the iron clevis. To keep the locking nut tight during the driving process, tape up the join using an industrial tape. If you need more than a single 3m length of threaded rod, join these using a coupler with a locking nut either side. Take care to thread the coupler equally onto each length. Once the coupler has been fitted, tape up the join using an industrial tape. Before driving the anchors, always check for surfaces that may be buried below the surface. Spray a mark where the anchors are to go. Note, for installation on steep slopes, we recommend seeking professional advice to determine whether rope access is required. The next step is to assemble a drive rod set. When connecting the drive rods, clean and lubricate the threads with grease as you go. And note, these drive rods have a left-hand thread. Firstly, connect the drive rod end to a single drive rod section. Depending on the drive rod setup supplied, you may also need to use a coupler if a male-to-male fitting is required. Connect a hex shank to the other end. Once assembled, all sections should be hand tight. Unlock the hammer, slip the hammer over the hex shank, then lock it again. Slip the anchor onto the drive end, keeping hold of the threaded rod. Before you start driving, there are some key points to be aware of. You need a minimum of 800mm of threaded rod sticking out to start the load locking process. Therefore, if you're driving in a single 3m threaded rod, the maximum depth you can drive is 2.2 meters. If required, you can easily increase the threaded rod length by slicing them using a coupler with a locking nut either side. This will be covered off in more detail later in the video. The driven depth will always need to be deeper than the design depth, as the load locking process will reduce the depth by around 2 to 3 times the anchor head length. It is vital to factor this in before you start installation. Because each drive rod is usually only 1.2 meters and these anchors are usually driven to deeper than 2 meters, additional drive rods will be needed. Drive the anchor into the soil at the specified angle until only the top of the last drive rod section is shown. Unlock the hammer from the drive rod and lift it off. Remove the hex shank. Connect another rod section. Reconnect the hex shank. Take care not to pull out the drive rods from the soil, as they could disconnect from the back of the anchor head and make it difficult to drive deeper. Lock the hammer over the hex shank and continue driving the anchor in. Repeat this process until you have reached the desired depth. Please note, if you hit something within the soil that doesn't allow you to keep driving the anchor in, we recommend hammering for another 10 seconds or so before abandoning it, in case it is only a small rock within the soil that can be dislodged. If you fail to drive the anchor into the desired depth, we recommend abandoning it and driving in another anchor in close to your first attempt. Once you've reached your design depth, you can disconnect the hammer. Next, let's remove the drive rod sections using the stressing jack. Firstly, connect a D-shackle to the stressing jack. Then connect the rod remover clamp using another D-shackle. Place the stressing jack over the exposed drive rod section. Remove the locking pin from the clamp and slide the clamp over the rod, making sure the long edge is facing the slope. Reinsert the locking pin and lock it in place. Slowly lever the drive rod section from the ground using the stressing jack. Once you've reached the top of the stressing jack, unclip the release to loosen it. Be careful, as it will likely be under a lot of tension. Lower the lever head and reset the release. On uneven ground, you can use something to support underneath the stressing jack foot. Keep levering until you feel the original drive rod feels loose, removing each other drive rod as you go. Fit the rod remover pair and remove the final rod section and drive end. Now the anchor has been installed, we can move on to the load locking process. Place the testing plate so it lies perpendicular to the threaded rod. Depending on the application, you can either prepare a flat surface behind or use a support like a piece of timber to gain the correct angle. Attach the 20-ton jack to the test jack stand and slide the unit over the threaded rod onto the test plate. Fit the square washer, screw on a locking nut until it is touching the washer. Attach the hydraulic hose to the 20-ton jack. Connect the hydraulic load gauge to the hydraulic pump. Then fit the other end of the hydraulic hose to the load gauge. Make sure you follow the air valve instructions before starting. Open the oil valve on the hydraulic pump. Press the up button on the controller. The hydraulic pump will begin lifting the threaded rod up. Keep pumping until the threaded rod has risen 100mm. Immediately turn off the oil pressure. Take note of the kilonewtons achieved and record it onto the test sheet. You can then turn the oil valve back on, which will lower the pump into its original starting position. Once the square washer has reset, tighten the nut, then repeat the process, raising the threaded rod in 100mm lifts. Record each result as you go until you reach the desired load. Note that you should reach the desired load after achieving an extension that is within 2 to 3 times the anchor head length. If you exceed this extension and still don't appear to achieve the load required, contact your Cirtex representative for advice. On some projects, the project engineer may require a creep test to be carried out. If this is required on your project, contact Cirtex to discuss this further. Now that your anchor has been installed, you can dismantle the testing gear. Remove the excess threaded rod and fit a load plate and load nut as specified.